When you walk past someone on the street, can you tell if they're sad, anxious, hurting? If you look at these two men in these photos, I need to move you. If you look at these two men in these photos, can you tell that anything is going on underneath? How do I make it go to the next? See, this is why I need you on here. Okay, when you look at these girls, when you look at these stunning girls, can you tell what they're going through? According to the National Alliance on Mental Health, also known as NAMI, 1 in 5 U.S. adults experience mental illness. 1 in 6 youth ages 6 to 17 will experience a mental health disorder every single year. These are not insignificant numbers. Now think about how often you have made the joke, I'm OCD because I'm organized. Or that you have ADD because you just can't focus. At least once out of every 5 times you have made that joke, you made it to someone who could have that mental disorder. According to Psychology Today, people with mental health difficulties remain among the most stigmatized groups in the world today. This is Mike. He's a World War, no, he's not that old. He's a war veteran who has PTSD. He's also the husband of my best friend. Due to his PTSD, he struggles with severe anxiety. He's also the father of 2 amazing sons, Axel, who's in the background, who's 3, and Liam, who's almost 2 months old. He's a student at Front Range and is studying brew sciences to one day open his own brewery. When you make the joke of, triggering, that's not a joke to him. That's real to him. Everything that's going on in the world has given him severe anxiety due to his PTSD. This is Ella. She has PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Ella was really sick as a child and has since had horrible PTSD and anxiety, especially around flu season, and with everything going on, she's been doing her best to cope. She's also incredibly talented as a hairstylist. She's been one of my close friends since middle school and is always there for her family and friends. She will always find a way to make her friends laugh. With everything going on, all the jokes about like, this is so hard. No, it's not. Staying inside, that's not hard. Remembering that you couldn't leave the house because you were sick as a child while everybody else played outside, and that makes you want to stay in bed all day, that's what's hard for her. Making jokes about how this is so triggering, it is for her. This whole time she's had such severe anxiety and disassociations because of how stressed she is and because of her PTSD. It's not a joke. This is Jeff Lacey and his family. He was diagnosed with OCD in 1996 and has had varying levels of debilitation since, sometimes so drastic it affects his social and professional life. He's married and has 2 gorgeous kids. Jeff Lacey is one of the best teachers I ever had in high school and is a huge supporter of me even to this day. When I reached out to him about this project, he was so excited to help because he's had kids make that joke in his class, and it hurts him every time. But he can't show that he has these issues because he'll get judged. People will be like, oh, no, you don't. You're not organized. He doesn't have to be organized to have OCD. It goes so much deeper than that. OCD is not about being organized. It's about having compulsive thoughts that make you do something because you believe something else will happen if you don't. It's about having thoughts that if you don't say a certain word or do a certain action a certain number of times, someone will die. And you genuinely believe that. OCD is not just being organized, and most people who have OCD are not organized. It's about so much more than that, and those jokes hurt everyone around you. This is Lexi. Lexi has generalized anxiety disorder and minor depression. She's been my best friend for 7 years, and she's always been there for me through my mental health journey, even when I wasn't the greatest friend. When she began to experience anxiety, she didn't know what to do. She was scared. She knew that there was a stigma. She didn't want to have help or get help. She didn't want to seem weak or like she couldn't do it by herself. She got her first panic attack When she got her first panic attack, she realized she knew what to do. Being a future psychology major, she knew she needed to seek out help. She graduates in a year with her bachelor's in psychology with an emphasis on addiction counseling from CSU, and she's been seeing a therapist regularly for the last 3 years. She's not shaking and rocking back and forth. She's not kind of afraid of something. She has had full-blown panic attacks where she cannot breathe. She feels like the world is crumbling around her, but she is still going, and she always has that smile on her face. This is Sheridan. She has major depressive disorder and anxiety. She's raised her horse from birth and has started her own little family with her fiance and their 2 fur babies. She's been one of my close friends since preschool. When she started having signs of depression in high school, she didn't know what to do. She would call me hysterical on the phone, not knowing what to do, not wanting to be alive anymore, and not wanting to tell her parents because she thought they'd think she was weak, and she couldn't handle it. She couldn't do it. She now sees a therapist weekly. She's been on medication for years. That's what helped her. She wasn't just kind of sad. She wasn't just a little annoyed. She wouldn't get out of bed for days at a time. She didn't want to be alive, and she's here today because she got help, because she sought professional help for her issues. Depression isn't just being sad. It's feeling like the weight of the world is crushing you and like you have no reason to be alive. This is Mitchell. She has bipolar disorder. Mitchell was diagnosed with bipolar disorder last year around Christmas when she was put under a 72-hour hold for attempting suicide. Mitchell's also starting her career as a makeup artist and is always supportive of her friends and family, does everything she can to put a smile on her face. She has been through so much. Her mom was the one that found her, and she didn't know what was wrong. She didn't know why she had these feelings. She just thought she was messed up, and if she told anybody, they'd lock her up forever. Mitchell isn't messed up. She's not crazy. She has bipolar. There's such a difference from being crazy than just having bipolar. She has mood swings, but they're not like the typical mood swings for like, oh, she's crazy, oh, she's just PMSing. It's actual hormonal changes in her brain. It's not a joke to her. This is me. I have major depressive disorder, anxiety, PTSD, ADD, and a couple other things. I have an eating disorder that has not been diagnosed. When you look at me, you see a smiling face. You see a pretty girl who's overly tall and always smiling and making jokes. In high school, I used to self-harm. Kids would make jokes about self-harming around me. They didn't know. They're like, oh, the person's probably a cutter. It's so funny. It's not funny. I would go home. I had marks on my arms, my ankles, my hips, my shoulders. I self-harmed for over 10 years. The last 3 years, I haven't done it at all, thanks to support from my girlfriend, my family, my therapist. There were times where I thought maybe if I go deep enough, I won't wake up in the morning. My parents didn't know for 7 of those 10 years. It's not a joke when you say you're sad, so you're depressed. It's not a joke when you say, oh, I have PTSD because you were kind of traumatized, because you were, in a scary situation. I was there for the Boston bombings. I had an active shooter situation in my high school, and I was abused for 8 months and wound up sending that person to jail. It's not a joke. It's not a joke when you joke about being upset. It's not a joke when you threaten to hit somebody because they made you mad. It's not a joke. Making these jokes is harmful, and it's horrible to do. Some of the most harmful effects these jokes can have is causing people to be reluctant to seek help. I didn't have to hurt myself for as long as I did, but I was scared that my parents would think I was weak, that I wasn't worthy or good enough. According to NAMI, another harmful effect is the lack of understanding by family, friends, coworkers, and others. My mom still doesn't understand why I did what I did. She doesn't understand how somebody could do that to themselves. I have friends who don't know what it feels like to not want to get out of bed because I am so incredibly sad that I cannot force myself to leave my bed. I've stayed in bed for weeks at a time. They don't get it. And when people make jokes, it lessens how real this is from me to everyone else. There's fewer opportunities for work, school, or social activities, and trouble finding housing. If I tell my bosses that I have these issues, that if somebody were to say a certain thing in front of me or do a certain thing, that I will go into a full-blown panic attack and have to leave work, they're less likely to hire me. I have had to leave work because of my PTSD before. I literally walked out the doors because of something that happened, and I almost got fired for it, so that I didn't lose my cool in front of the entire store. Bullying, physical violence, and harassment. I've had people make jokes about me. They've seen my scars and made jokes. They've made jokes about abuse, about depression, about my ADD. ADD is not just the inability to focus. It's also putting yourself down. It's also sitting in a room for 3 hours and not knowing what happened. It's not just, I can't focus on the teacher talking. It's so much more. But people think ADD is like a dog going squirrel every time something walks by. It's so much more than that. Health insurance will not adequately cover your mental illness treatment. I have to pay $150 every time I go see a therapist because my health insurance, which is a very good health insurance, does not cover enough. So we pay out of pocket $150. And for a long time, 3 years ago, I was going to a therapist twice a week in Littleton. It was $300 a week so that I would be okay. The belief you'll never succeed at certain challenges or that you can't improve your situation. This one affects me a lot, and it affects my friends who you saw earlier a lot. Because of my mental illness and because of the things I've been through, for 2 years, I didn't believe I'd ever graduate college. I didn't believe I'd ever make it, but I did. I'm now going to CSU in the fall to graduate in 2 years with a bachelor's in psychology and an emphasis on addiction counseling. I'll then be going to get my master's. Because of mental health stigma, I didn't believe I'd ever make it because of my ADD, because I'm on Adderall so that I can focus. One of the best ways to end this stigma is to speak out. Express your opinions at events, letters to an editor, even the internet. Even this speech is speaking out to end the stigma, to stop making the jokes. They're not that funny. They're not that accurate. Educate people on mental illness. Educate them on what it really means to be OCD. Educate them on what it really means to have PTSD. And be conscious of your language. Language matters. According to Helmi Henkin, she fights the stigma by reminding people that their language matters. It's so easy to refrain from using mental health conditions as adjectives. In my experience, most people are willing to replace their usage of it with something else and explain why their language is problematic. Instead of saying, I'm so OCD, when you're being neat and organized, say, look at how good this looks. It's so neat. Maybe we can do this more. Language matters, and you don't know who you're talking to or what they're going through.